The rain fell like jagged needles against the neon-lit streets, and for Maria, every drop felt like a tiny weight pressing down on her tired shoulders. She had spent the last 12 hours on her feet, balancing trays and forcing smiles in a world that rarely smiled back. Tonight, like every other night, she wore her uniform like armor, stained, wrinkled, but steadfast. Maria wiped her brow, inhaling the scent of sizzling steaks and overworked fryer oil. Her heart was heavy, but hope, that stubborn little ember, flickered somewhere deep inside her. She thought of her little brother waiting at home, dreaming of a better life than the one they were living. That thought, more than anything, kept her moving forward. And then he arrived. A sleek black sports car rolled up to the diner, its engine purring like a predator. Out stepped a teenager with gold-cuffed designer clothes, perfect hair, and the kind of smirk that made the world feel smaller and everyone else inferior. He surveyed the diner with a condescending glance, as if the very act of walking in was charity to the people inside. "Table for one," he said, voice dripping with entitlement. Maria led him to a booth, the smile she plastered on her face trembling just slightly. She didn't know this boy yet, but instinct whispered that this encounter would linger longer than most. He ordered his food with the precision of someone who expected the world to bend around him. And when Maria brought his plate, careful, polite, professional, he looked her up and down. Then, with an audacity that shocked even the veteran waitstaff, he spat right across her apron. Time seemed to fracture. Maria froze, the spatters of spit burning a mark of humiliation and rage across her chest. She wanted to scream, to cry, to throw the plate in his face, but she didn't. She was trained to survive, to endure, to keep walking forward. At that exact moment, the diner's door swung open. 50 motorcycles roared into the lot, their headlights slicing through the rain like steel swords. Maria didn't see them at first, lost in the shock of the moment. But the rumble of the engines grew, and suddenly 50 figures clad in leather and chrome, the insignia of the Chrome Guardians, surrounded the diner. The boy's smirk faltered. His laughter died before it could even leave his lips. One by one, the Guardians stepped forward, their presence an unspoken warning. Their eyes were not filled with malice. They were filled with respect for the woman who had just endured his cruelty. Maria's pulse raced. She had no idea who these people were, only that they had chosen this moment to appear, like knights in a modern-day fable. The richest kid in the room, who thought himself untouchable, suddenly looked fragile, small, and painfully human. "Apologize," one of the Guardians said, his voice calm but thunderous enough to echo across the diner. The boy stumbled over words, his arrogance melting into terror. He wanted to retreat, but he had nowhere to hide. Slowly he muttered an apology, more out of instinct than remorse. Maria, still trembling, finally spoke. Her voice was low but steady. "It's not enough to just say sorry. You need to understand what respect is worth." The Guardians nodded in unison, their silent support bolstering Maria's courage. And for the first time in years, she felt seen, not as a waitress, not as a service worker, not as someone invisible, but as someone whose dignity mattered. That night, Maria didn't just survive humiliation. She witnessed justice tempered with grace, and the lesson burned into her. Courage is often quiet, and power is most real when it defends the powerless. If this story is hitting you hard, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Exposed Tales so we can keep sharing real, gripping stories that make you feel every heartbeat. The following weeks were a blur. The story of the diner incident spread like wildfire across town. But Maria didn't bask in notoriety. She returned to work, apron stained and hands blistered, but with her head held higher than ever. Something had shifted inside her, the quiet strength that comes from standing tall in the face of disrespect. She began to notice little changes in the world around her. Patrons greeted her with warmth, co-workers treated her with renewed respect, and strangers offered smiles that felt genuine. It wasn't magic. It was the ripple effect of courage meeting justice. The boy, of course, disappeared from her life, his world of privilege ill-equipped to process the lesson he had just been handed. But the impact he had on her was permanent, in the best way possible. He had been a catalyst, and she had turned the fire of humiliation into fuel for personal growth. Maria also learned about the Chrome Guardians, how they were more than muscle or intimidation. They were a group that silently protected the vulnerable, the unnoticed, the overlooked. They reminded her that real strength isn't about wealth or dominance, it's about defending those who can't defend themselves. She began to dream bigger. Not for revenge, not for fame, but for herself, her brother, and everyone who had ever felt powerless. She saved money, worked extra shifts, and eventually enrolled in night classes. Each small victory felt monumental, a testament to her resilience. The memory of that rainy night never left her. The roar of engines, the gleam of chrome, the silent solidarity of strangers who chose to act when it mattered most. And in her quiet moments, she realized that life's harshest encounters often set the stage for the greatest transformations. If this story inspired you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below. Let us know which moment hit you the hardest, because your voice matters to expose tales. Years later, Maria walked into a different diner, one she owned herself. The neon lights reflected in her eyes, but now they were lights of triumph, not struggle. A young waitress, nervous and exhausted, approached her table. Maria smiled and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Keep going. You're stronger than you think, and there are people who notice, even when you feel invisible. She had become the embodiment of that rainy night's lesson. Dignity is not given, it's defended, nurtured, and cherished. And sometimes, the universe sends chrome-clad angels to remind you that your worth is never defined by the cruelty of others. The story ends not with vengeance, but with resilience, courage, and a quiet, heart-pounding triumph that lingers in the soul. Maria's journey reminds us all that standing tall, even when the world seems against you, can change everything.